Hello everyone. So in today's video, we're going to be talking about solving quadratics by taking the square root. And that's just another method to solving quadratic equations. Of course, there's graphing, right? If you can graph one, you could solve it. If you could use the method of completing the square, you could solve it. You can use factoring as a method to solve, okay? And just getting yourself used to several of these methods. You can also use using the quadratic formula, So just getting yourself comfortable with these methods are going to help you when it comes to solving a quadratic and looking for those solutions, okay? Always remember that when you're solving a quadratic, because x is squared, right, that means there's usually two different x values, okay? So I always want to point that out. X squared usually means that there might be two different x values that you're solving for, different from a linear equation where you're solving for one x. Quadratics usually have two x values, okay? So that's one of the concepts that you need to know here. Another concept is that, right, for example, the square root of 9 is 3. Usually, most of you have known this to be 3. But have you also considered the fact that the square root of 9 could be negative 3? Well, that simply does work because negative 3 squared is negative 3 times negative 3, which is equal to 9, okay? So therefore, we know that a square root, all right, can be negative or positive. The square root of a perfect square can be negative or positive. Let's go through another one of those so we can kind of see what this looks like. And this is a concept that you must understand because it's going to keep coming up over and over when you're dealing with quadratics, right? So the square root of 25 is 5, right? We know that. But the square root of 25 is also negative 5, right? Because negative 5 times negative 5, or negative 5 squared, is also 25. So now that you have an understanding of that, keep that in mind as we move forward. So we're going to start with our first problem, and it's going to be a very simple one, okay? So I'm just going to draw a line here, because this is where I'm going to write the problems that I'm going to work on. And here we have to solve for x. Now, when we solve for x, everyone knows, right, that we have to use inverse operations, and if you don't, inverse operations are what help you isolate variables. In order to isolate that x and get it alone, get everything away from it, you use inverse operations. Luckily here, there's nothing next to x, right? There's nothing being added or subtracted from it. So the additive inverse is gone, right? But x is being squared, so we have to use the opposite of something being multiplied with something being divided. And in order to do that, you have to take the square root, right? And the square root will get rid of that. Let's see how that works. So for our first example, we have x squared is equal to 25. Alrighty. So in order to get rid of this squared, well, we do the square root. So the square root of x squared is x, right? In that square root, it'll cancel out the square portion, and it just cancels out the square root, right? It cancels each other out. So x is equal to, right? And what you do to one side, you also have to do to the other side. So therefore, you'll see the square root of 25. Now, here's the tricky part. We know that the square root of 25 is 5, but we also know the square root of 25 is negative 5. So in order to write that, basically, you'll just see this notation here. X is equal to the positive or negative square root of 25, which is x is equal to positive or negative 5. And let's rewrite that. You usually see it rewriting as this: x is equal to 5, and x is equal to negative 5. Okay, that's the same thing written in this notation here: positive or negative 5. Okay, we're gonna do a couple more of these just so you can get a little bit familiar. But they're gonna be very basic, so don't worry about that. You will get very familiar with this topic, and then we're gonna move into some more difficult ones. Alrighty, so we did that one. So let's try this one. X squared is equal to 49. So we have x squared is equal to 49. Now, you can pause and you can go at it and give this one a shot yourself if you feel like you're already good. But I'm going to keep going and let's get to solving this. So basically, in order to undo that x squared, remember, we take the square root. So we're going to do the square root of x squared, right? And we're going to do the square root of 49. Now, we already know that there's a negative and positive square root of 49, right? That's safe to say. There's a negative and positive square root of 49. So you're going to see that negative and positive a lot when dealing with quadratics. And that's just because it can be either or. So this is going to cancel out the squared. So therefore, we're left with x is equal to, well, what is the negative square root of 49? That's the positive square root of 49. That's 7. And what is the negative square root of 49? That's negative 7. So here you have your two x values that we've always been solving for anyway, right? And remember, think of that graph. Think of that graph, okay? Think of that graph. If I had to do a rough sketch here, if x was 7 and negative 7, well, I'll be somewhere over here, maybe, right? I'll be somewhere over here. And I can just get a rough sketch going, right, for my solutions. Just a rough sketch at negative 7 and positive 7. Okay, so always think of that graph, think of those solutions. But when you're dealing with quadratics, you usually have two x values, right? So definitely understand what's going on here. Think graphically as you're solving quadratic equations, of course, and understand that there's a negative and positive square root of negative and positive square root of 49. Okay, so let's go on and solve one more. This will give you some practice. Go in and give it a try. Okay, you can pause the video, go in and give it a try. I'm going to go ahead and solve. Alrighty, so I'll rewrite. Right? We know we take the square root of both sides, okay? But always remember it's the positive and negative square root of 144. Let me just clean that up a little bit. It's the positive and negative square root of 144, so we'll just make that a little cleaner. Right? This will cancel both out, so therefore we're just left with x is equal to 12 and x is equal to negative 12. And very simple, okay? Remember again, think of that graph and how that would look, of course. Alrighty, so there we go. And that's not all, but that's the basic foundation of what you need. Here we're going to upgrade these problems a little bit more. So we're going to do x squared. Okay, it's minus 2 is equal to 23. Okay? And right, you might have a problem that looks like this. Don't be afraid. Inverse operations are all you're thinking of. So let's go on and give this one a try. And if you feel comfortable, you can go on and give it a try yourself. But just remember, all you're thinking about is inverse operations. Okay? Alrighty, I'm going to go ahead and solve. You can give it a pause, solve on your own. I'm going to go in and solve. So the first thing I'm thinking is inverse operations, and I know that I need to get x alone. Well, something's being subtracted from x, so that's a problem. So the first thing I'm going to do is the additive inverse. And that's by adding 2 to both sides. Nothing but inverses here. This is going to cancel out. It's going to leave my x squared over here, which is equal to what? Again, 25. And then we would just continue those steps that we've already learned. Right? The inverse of squaring something is taking the square root. Right? Also remember it's a negative or positive square root. Right? I know this is kind of close, but you get what's going on here. All right? This cancels out, so therefore it just leaves us with x is equal to the positive square root of 25 is 5. The negative square root of 25 is negative 5. See? Very simple. Okay, that's just an additive inverse problem. Then you take the square root, which is the inverse of something squared, okay? And I'm going to do another example that's a little bit more tricky. But you all can definitely handle this. Just think inverse operations, and the more you practice, the better you'll actually get. So for this example, okay, we're going to write, let me just get that out of here. All right. Alrighty, so we're doing 3, right, times x minus 4, close parentheses, squared is equal to 27. Alrighty, so a lot of things going on here that you may already know if you've been dealing with factoring. Perfect square trinomial here, right? When we were dealing with perfect square trinomials, we remember that we rewrite it as a binomial square. So that's something interesting to know here. Note here. This is set equal to 27, which is something also interesting to note here. Okay. But what we're gonna do here is we're gonna solve by taking the square root. It's one of the fastest ways. We don't want to have to deal with all that other stuff. We want to deal with solving by taking the square root because that's gonna help us even faster. So how do we do that? So we notice something here. All right. We're thinking PEMDAS, right? We're thinking PEMDAS. So we know that obviously what's in our parentheses, x minus 4, we can't do anything with that. We have our exponents up top. We would have to deal with that next, okay? But before we begin, we're looking at all of that, what we notice is that we have a 3 on the left side of our parentheses here. So that just means in order to get rid of that, you can just do the opposite of multiplication, which is what? Division. So yet another inverse. What you do on one side, of course, I don't know if I've echoed this as much in the video. What you do on one side, you also do to the other side. I didn't echo that as much, so let me be careful. What you do on the left side, you must also do on the right. Okay, that's why we were doing it both times. Glad I caught that. Okay, so you do you divide both sides by 3. Okay, and what that's going to leave us with is this is going to cancel out, so it's going to leave us with x minus 4 squared is equal to 9. Alrighty, so now we just do our inverse again, right? But I know you all are thinking, like, what inverse could he possibly be doing? And so right now we have this whole side, left side being squared. So therefore, think inverse. Well, let's actually just take the square root of the whole left side. But again, we must also do it to the right side. Okay? And remember, it's a positive or negative square root when you're squaring as well. So we're going to just go ahead and get rid of that. That's just going to leave us with x minus 4 is equal to the positive or negative square root of 9. So therefore, I'm just going to write that, right? Positive 9. And I'm just going to break it up into 2. The reason I broke it up into 2 is because we have more steps, right? So last time it was x is equal to 9. That there was nothing being added or subtracted to the x. So I just broke it up into 2 so you could definitely see what's going on there. And this is a must-follow process, right? Okay, so that just means this is going to cancel out, and x is equal to 13. Oh, wow. Nope. Glad I just caught something. So this 9 here is actually, no, that is 9. Pardon me. What's actually off here is this right here. Okay. That's, no, I caught a mistake there. Something that mathematicians do all the time, okay? This is a negative 3. Let me write that clearer for you. Definitely catch your mistakes as you're working through. And as you see me making mistakes, you'll know it's also okay to make mistakes every once in a while as well, as long as you go back and retrain your brain to follow what you did wrong. So we got x is equal to 7 here, okay? Because 3 plus 4 is 7. The 4's cancel out. That's still there. And then we have our 4's canceling out again. X is equal to negative 1. Whoop. Negative 3 plus 4. Oh, that's positive 1, sorry. Definitely off my A game right now. Yep, positive 1. Alrighty, and these are our two solutions. Again, you were solving for x, so that's okay. You have two solutions, so you know that. And again, if you sketch that, just a sketch, right? You be at 1 over here, right? And you be at 7 over here somewhere. Your parabola might look something like this. All right, just as a rough sketch. So definitely understand what's going on when you're solving quadratics by taking the square root. What you must do on one side, you must also do to the other. Definitely use nothing but inverse operations to isolate, and practice, practice, practice. You got this. And also remember, if you make a mistake, check through your work, because you could catch those mistakes and give it a try over and over again. You'll be a pro. Alrighty, everyone. That concludes the video, and see ya.